Hey, what's up guys? My name is Chris and this is More Than Sawdust. And in today's video, we're going to be making 3 unique cutting boards out of this beautiful walnut that I've got stacked in front of me. So let's get going. Well, all right, first step we've got is just getting these things jointed, all these boards, so we got a nice smooth edge so we can do our glue ups with. Now obviously if you want to skip this step, you could just buy slab boards that are wide enough already for your project and you won't have to worry about doing the jointing and doing the glue ups. And from there we're just going to get our panels glued up for each individual board that we're working on. Now I've got to always be mindful that my planer is a 13-inch planer, so I can go about 12.5 inches wide on each of my panels so that I'm able to run them through the planer. So I always keep that in mind. And in fact, you'll see here in a little bit, I made one of these too wide for the round cutting board that we're making, and I wasn't able to run it through the planer, so that's a lot more sanding. Well, we got all those glued up and then I just let them set overnight. You don't have to necessarily let them set overnight, but I just did. I usually do. And then here we're just cleaning up the glue. Some people like to wipe down early on in the process. I like to let it dry and then just clean it up when I'm done. And then we're gonna just mark out our general shapes on our templates so I can see them a little easier, make sure I like the way they look and the boards are laid out. This is kind of the fun part. Now this shape of Arkansas, this was a tough cutout with a bandsaw, especially when you don't like changing your blades out and you don't put the right ones on there. So, but it was fun doing around all the little curves, and I went back after this that you're seeing and did a little more detailed work inside the little notches. And then this one was a little too big for me to get through or maneuver around in my bandsaw, so just had to cut this out. And then we were able to take it over to the bandsaw here in a second and kind of get a little closer to our cutout lines. And of course, if you use a router a lot, or you cut templates out and use flush trim bits, you know that the closer you get to your actual final shape or your final lines, the easier it is on that router table and on the router bits. You want to get as close as you can. That way when you're doing this right here, you don't have to take as many passes or a lot off at one time. But we're just going to go through and get everything flush trimmed to what our template is. And again, all these little notches, just got to take a little bit more time and get down in them. So this process can be easy or a little more difficult depending on the shape you're trying to achieve. Getting these off was the toughest part of this process. This tape that I use, that I ordered, it really sticks. I mean, it's pretty strong, but you don't have to worry about your templates moving or anything sliding. So now we're going to just run these through the planer. You'll see me marking up the surface here, and that way I know when they go through the planer that we touch every square inch of the surface and make sure that everything gets planed nice and flat. Once all the marker is gone, then we know we've touched every part of it with the blades. And then here we're going to use a planer sled for the larger rectangle piece that we'll be using for the big rectangle cutting board. Then we're just going to measure out our width and height for our rectangular board. And then I always find just squaring everything up with your miter saw and then going to the table saw to square up the longer edges, for me, is just the easiest way to do it. And, you know, obviously, if your miter saw is not this wide, you don't have this big of a blade, you can't do it all in one pass, but I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. We just want to make sure we get everything squared up.
All right, guys, let's kind of talk about where we are in the process real quick. Quick recap. So far, we've taken templates for our state of Arkansas. I've still got my sticky tape on here, but the state of Arkansas, and then our round one with the handle. And we've got these cut down. We use the bandsaw to trim them down. Then we've taken them over to the router table and got them cut to the shape using the templates. Now, we did have a little bit of some damage on the handle where it gets pointy here. We did have a break off when we were using the router table. Guys, that kind of thing happens. That's part of woodworking. And when you've got wood, you don't know where there's fragile spots at or where there's sensitive areas. You get using something like a router table where you've got that blade spinning at high speed. All it takes is something to catch and you'll get a part chipping off or something like that. No big deal. We're just going to take it, and I've redrawn a different shape for the handle. I'm going to take it back to the bandsaw and recut out a different shape, and then we'll smooth it off with the sanders. So no big deal. It's like a happy accident, right? Like Bob Ross used to say with his paintings. So, but we've got our two shapes, and then we've also got our rectangular board, kind of more of our traditional style cutting board. And we took that to the miter saw and the table saw and got it trimmed down to the size that we want. I normally make mine like 12 by 18. That's kind of a standard size that I do a lot of mine. So that's what we're making this one. We ran them all through the planer. Like I said, we got them pretty well flattened out. We're going to get these cleaned up with a sander, get everything smoothed out, clean up around the edges of everything with the hand router, and probably going to have these good to go. We may go ahead and put a juice groove in this rectangle one. So let's get moving with that.
So like I said, these are actually going to be used for samples that I can take around and show the realtors when I try to sell them on products that they can use to give to their clients for closing gifts when they buy houses from them. So these actual 3 boards aren't going to be sold to clients. They're going to just be used as sample pieces. They're going to get beat up and dinged up. I will digitally put designs on them so I can take photos to put in a catalog or a pamphlet to hand out to the realtors as well. So that's what these 3 are going to be used for. Here we're just doing the juice groove. And this is a big jig that I made about a year or so ago, and I honestly haven't used it a lot. I haven't done a lot of juice grooves in my cutting boards, but I know it's something that one of the realtors had asked for. So the ones that we give to them or we sell to them will have juice grooves in them. So this jig will get a lot more use. Alright, and then we're just going to clean up inside the groove a little bit. Now, they do make tools specifically for this. I've got a card scraper that's got a kind of a juice groove end on it, but it was a little larger than this one, so we just used some sandpaper and did it by hand. Cleaned up around the sharp edges. And then we're just going to put a small chamfer on the outside edge of this one. A lot of people like rounded edges on cutting boards. I do that as well, but for some reason I like squared or angled off chamfers. I just think they look maybe a little more modern than what a rounded edge does, but you know, everybody likes different things, so no big deal either way. And then just a little bit more sanding. I started off with 80 grit on these things, and I worked my way up to, I did 150 on these, since like I said, they're not going to be sold to clients or anything. They're just going to be beat up and thrown around, taken around for samples, so I just stopped at 150. And then I changed my mind on this handle. I talked about just cutting a different shape. I did that, and I didn't like the size of it with what was left, so I just took some of the other scrap walnut that I had and cut this handle off square and decided just to make a new one. Like I said, I wouldn't do this if I was selling this as a product for a client, but again, as a sample piece, no big deal. I'd rather just repair it, and that way the handle matches what the future ones will. So you can see I just did a few dowels, and we're just going to glue this back up, and once we get it all seamed together, and you'll see when we get it sanded down, you can barely tell in terms of like a line or anything that it was a repair job. So, and it will be great for the purpose I need it for. Again, I wouldn't recommend doing this if you were selling this as a product. But I did want to show that things happen, and you know, depending on the needs, you can make repairs on stuff. So we're just getting this one sanded up. Now it did require a lot more sanding because again I couldn't run it through the planer because of the width, so it took me a little longer to get this one sanded down. And now this again was just a little more tedious, cleaning up all these little notches, but man, I love the way it came out. It was a great template. Now we're just putting them in our mineral oil and we'll let them sit and dry up. Always makes the grain pop so nice. Of course, they're really wet here, so, but man, the colors are wonderful, and I really love walnut. One of my favorite woods.
Well, all right, guys, here you go. Walnut boards, 3 unique different shapes of cutting boards. Now, I want to show you some examples of things you can do to customize these for friends, family, or even clients. And here's one right here, and then another one over here, and another one back over here. And that's just some ways that you can do this. Now, obviously, if you're doing this for signage or home decor, you could use stencils and paint or different ways of doing those graphics or designs on them. Now, if they're going to be used for cutting boards or charcuterie boards, anything with food prep, you'd want to maybe laser engrave them, which is how I'm going to do it. But I wanted to show you some things you could make. These are fun projects. They weren't too complicated or difficult. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember, we were all created with a purpose. So go out and create with purpose. You guys take care, and we'll see you soon.